There has been some discussion and comments floating around that there is both a planned and perceived obsolescence of eMTBs, that the lifespan of motors and batteries has been deliberately shortened in order to force us into buying new product. Now, whilst it's true that this phenomenon might well exist with many electrical gadgets or possibly the colourway on some shoes, there is a difference between planned obsolescence and progress. So where are we at? Where are you at with your current or future eMTB? The Generation 1 Canyon Spectral and the Generation 2 Specialized Levo. Are these bikes now fully obsolete? Well, we're going to attempt to answer that question today. But first of all, the reason I've raised this topic is because I see many comments of people fearing, yes, fearing to buy an eMTB because they feel that the next big thing is just around the corner. It's a very alarmist attitude, and it's very much a mentality of, I need the latest. Here's a typical comment. This is the main reason why I refrain from buying one, but I really want one. Well, let me tell you, there ain't no magic cells coming soon. The big steps in eMTB have already been taken. So you might as well quit worrying, go buy your eMTB, or even better, continue to ride your existing eMTB and have some fun. Don't even worry about the motor. Flaws, yes, and they're pretty much nearly all fixable, just like your car. Talking of cars, here's AD. You might have seen me and AD on some big mountain adventures on possibly some of the latest eMTBs. AD, thanks for joining us. We're going to talk about obsolescence, and also a word which comes up quite often is backwards compatibility. We see lots of people stressing out that new Bosch or Shimano motors won't fit into their old frames. Does it matter?
No, not really. I mean, firms, manufacturers, and any industry is always going to go progress and go forward, new products. If everything was backward compatible, well, they wouldn't sell anything. Yeah. And then we'll no longer get progress.
And it also seems, AD, that the new products are actually better than the old ones, which is not actually always the case.
Nope.
And also, nobody's actually forcing anybody to buy anything. And a lot of these bikes are actually incredibly fixable. Now, there's actually a reason that we've brought these two bikes together, because the last time they were in action was actually in 2019 in northern Italy. AD, let's start off with the Levo. This is your personal bike, which you use daily.
Yeah.
Now, this is the Gen 2 Levo, AD. You could argue that the Gen 1 Levo was the shape and form which many eMTBs have followed. It was the beginning of modern eMTB, if you like. But tell us about this bike. It's the one you ride a lot.
No, absolutely, Steve. I agree with you. I mean, this bike is now nearly 5 years old. It's 700 watt-hour battery, which is still current.
Yeah.
Still the Bros motor that now current bikes still have. Even SRAM's new motor, it's the same.
21 kilos?
Yeah, lightweight, full 29. I mean, the only things that's changed, I mean, the whole system of this is still current. You can still use the current Specialized app with it. The only things that change is just evolutional changes in geometry.
The geometry. Shall I go into the geometry? So look, the new Levo has actually got 27.5 wheels. It's also adjustable. But when you look at the geometry, that is very much progress. It's an evolution into brands actually understanding the kind of actions of eMTB a bit more. So for example, the reach on the new Levo is 477. It was 455 on this bike in size large. This is a size large. The chainstay is interesting. 455 chainstay on this bike, and there's a 442mm chainstay on the new bike, which is partly a reflection of it being a 27.5 rear wheel. The head tube angle is a lot slacker. It's 64 on the new bike, 66 on this bike, but the seat tube angle, AD, is actually quite similar. So I'd say very small changes to geometry, just fine tuning, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, and that's across the board in mountain biking and e-mountain biking.
Okay, here's a big one then. Do you actually think that the new Levo, and you've ridden many of the new Levos, do you think it's actually better?
Well, This is my favourite bike when I'm back here in the UK. It's just the perfect trail bike. Trails are not too steep, it rolls faster, the routes is faster, just nice. The Gen 3, when I was in Italy, I preferred it. A bit longer, slacker head angle, it helped on the steep alpine terrain.
Interesting, interesting. I guess, yeah, being 29-inch wheels front and rear. I guess the important thing for you guys to know about this bike is it can be fixed, can't it? That motor can be totally overhauled for not too much money.
No, absolutely. It's still maintainable.
Yeah, I think an overhaul price on this motor from eBike Motor Centre in the UK, I think it's £215. So when you consider some mountain bike components at the moment, you know, like cassettes and derailleurs, which are like, you know, £500, £600 a piece. I mean, the cost to replace a motor, rebuild a motor, is actually relatively inexpensive. So let's get this into context for a minute. eMTB has been around for just over a decade. We've had some great innovations and some not so good ones. We have witnessed an era of quite significant innovation, but the important bit to understand is that the big steps in innovation have already been made. For example, the Specialized Levo, as we mentioned, could be argued set the standard of how the layout of eMTB should be today. Do you think, AD, that the next big step in the evolution of eMTBs is actually reliability?
I don't know, Steve. Seems to be a trend to go smaller, lighter. And in my opinion, I think these two bikes, I mean, they're 5 years old. I got a feeling these were peak reliability was this period.
Interesting.
You know, smaller bearings, tighter electrical components. For me, I just things go more wrong. I could be wrong, but we can only wait and see.
AD, that's quite interesting you say that. I mean, and it's true. You know, lots of motors are getting smaller, more compact, and a little bit lighter weight. But the important point to make here is just because your existing eMTB is not backwards compatible, that totally doesn't mean to say it's obsolete, does it?
No, not at all.
AD, our second bike is the Canyon Spectral on. This is the first gen. And I think this is actually a story of progress. Having said that, we did do some pretty major technical terrain out in Italy when we rode this bike five years ago. And
Yeah.
it's still an incredibly capable bike, isn't it?
Particularly when Burrell was riding it, it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a riding skill element to this as well. But, you know, 22 kilos, yes, 500 watt hour battery. The geometry did need a little bit of adjustability. Actually, let's talk about geometry. Let me just prop this bike up here. I mean, I know that Joey thinks I'm not going to be able to do it, but I mean, you know, that's having done it 1,000 times. Oh!
Got it. Bar meant to be straight.
Doesn't matter, we're talking about this bike.
Is
But
it?
nicely done.
Oh.
There you go. That's the difference between professional and amateur, right? Let's talk about this bike. Now, the current bike, I mean, the bike, what are you doing?
Doesn't hold. Oh.
Okay, we have to take 5 here where we watch AD do this, and we will watch AD do this.
How have you done it?
Are you happy with that?
There we go.
100% won't
Not
stay there.
moving.
Anyhow, back to the discussion about the geometry of this bike. I think the current version of the Spectral is very much an evolution. It's a fine tune of this bike. I mean, the current bikes come with a carbon frame. What they've done is they've tweaked the geometry. They've got a steeper seat-tube angle. I think critically the chainstay is a little bit longer, which makes it a better climbing machine. I think the suspension, Canyon have actually made the Spectral on a very lively e-mountain bike. Oh no!
I didn't even touch it.
As I was saying, the Canyon is actually quite a lively bike. And also, I mean, the fact that now you've got a... And also the fact that you've now leave the Levo, and also the fact that you've now got a 900 watt hour battery in a bike which is still 21 kilos. So yes, you know, progress does happen, but at the same time, I think you could still have this bike here with two 500 watt hour batteries, and you've still got a fantastic bike. You know, it's still great geometry, very capable. Before you go off riding, and it's nice to see the bike's very nicely behaved, is stressing about backwards compatibility in itself leads to this mindset. You know, people are actually worrying about buying an eMTB because they think the latest and greatest is just around the corner. And it's not, is it?
No. It's just, yeah, you're going to get some evolution, but there's no game-changing bike's going to come out there for a long time.
Well, yeah, I mean, here's an example. You know, I've got a 2013 VW. I'm not worried about putting a 2024 motor in that van.
Exactly.
Well, I know you're not.
Well, mine's on 300,000 miles, so it doesn't worry me.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, the whole mentality of, like, I think someone called it unhinged consumerism. I mean, it doesn't need to be that way. These bikes are absolutely perfectly up to the task in hand.
Yeah.
Folks, thanks so much for joining us. I think it's an interesting subject, and we just don't want you to worry about things that might be around the corner when they're actually not. I think, like we mentioned earlier, the big steps in eMTB have already been taken. It's true that there is a need for more reliability, but at the same time, you can actually fix these bikes. And actually, on that subject, we're going to see how Aidy's bike goes, and when the time comes, we'll take it, we'll fix it, and we can actually upgrade it, can't we?
I know, can't wait.
Thanks for joining us in the woods of the south of England.